Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz. It's the world's most critical oil choke point, and right now, something is happening there that could flip the rules of global trade on their head. It's not exactly piracy, it's something bigger, something state-run. Think of it as a toll booth on the high seas. Let's get into it. This really is the big question, isn't it? What we're seeing from Iran isn't just some regional squabble. It is a direct challenge to a principle that has kept global commerce moving for centuries, the freedom to navigate the high seas. You have to wonder, is that era now over?
So at the very center of this whole story is this number, $2 million. Now this isn't a port fee, it's not a tax. According to reports, this is the price that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is demanding from certain ships for one simple thing, to pass through safely.
Yeah, you heard that right. Up to $2 million for one ship on one trip. And remember where this is happening, the Strait of Hormuz. This is the artery that about a fifth of the entire world's oil flows through. The ripple effects here are just massive. And here, this is the detail that changes everything. This isn't about US dollars, which is, the currency of global trade. The demand is for payment in China's currency, the yuan. And that one little fact, well, it takes this whole thing from a regional shakedown to a massive global strategic power play. So how did this even happen? How did the IRGC manage to just set up a toll booth in the middle of an international waterway? Let's take a look at the mechanics of how this thing actually works. When you look at the details, you can see just how organized this is. This is not random piracy. It's a formal system run by a branch of a state's military, the IRGC Navy. And they're picky. They're only giving passage to ships from countries they consider friendly. And the money? Wow. The potential revenue is just staggering. We're talking about numbers that could approach $1 billion a month.
Okay, so this entire operation flies directly in the face of decades of international maritime law. It's a fundamental challenge to the legal framework that basically allows global commerce to exist.
The legal principle here is actually crystal clear. It's something called transit passage, and it's written into the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. The language is totally ambiguous. The right of passage through these international straits cannot be suspended or impeded. It's pretty much one of the most fundamental rules of the sea. And right here, you can see the conflict laid out, side by side. It's black and white. UNCLOS says passage is for all ships. The IRGC is making it selective. UNCLOS explicitly says you can't charge ships just for passing through. The IRGC has turned it into a multi-million-dollar toll. This isn't a gray area. It's a blatant violation of international law. So you might be asking, if it's so illegal, how is it still happening? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Enforcement has failed. When a UN Security Council resolution was put forward to demand the strait be reopened, it was vetoed. By who? Russia and China. So without any global consensus to enforce the rules, international law becomes, well, just words on a piece of paper. But look, this isn't just about collecting some fees. The real strategic play here is all about the currency being demanded. Choosing the yuan was no accident. It's a critical piece of a much, much larger puzzle. I mean, let's be real. The US dollar is the undisputed king of global finance. The yuan, in comparison, is a pretty minor player. But this toll system, it completely changes that math. It creates a mandatory reason to use the yuan right in the heart of the global energy trade. All of a sudden, if you want to move your oil, you are forced to buy and use China's currency. The source material really nails it with this quote. This isn't about market forces or which currency is more convenient. It's about forcing countries to use the yuan, not because they want to, but because a military force controlling a vital waterway is telling them they have to.
Now, this kind of state-sponsored extortion on the high seas, it isn't entirely new. In fact, if you look back in history, there's a pretty shocking parallel that shows just how serious a threat this is to the global order.
200 years ago, the Barbary states in North Africa did almost the exact same thing in the Mediterranean. They demanded tribute or protection money from ships just to pass safely. And this practice led a very young United States to fight its first overseas wars, the Barbary Wars, to establish this core principle of freedom of navigation. The very same principle that's being challenged today.
So while it's not piracy in the legal sense, because that's about private actors, it's something else, maybe even more troubling. You can call it sovereign extortion.
a government using its military to hold global trade for ransom.
So what's the end game here? What's the ultimate goal? Because it's not just about money. It's about building a whole new system for global trade that operates completely outside the existing rules.
This slide really lays out the whole game plan. Iran is under sanctions, cut off from the dollar SWIFT system. So they collect these tolls in yuan. Those payments then get processed through CIPS, which is China's alternative to SWIFT. And the result? The entire transaction is invisible to U.S. financial oversight. It is a perfect, sanctions-busting closed loop.
And that really brings us to the most critical takeaway. This isn't just a cash grab. It is a test case, a prototype for a new way of doing business, where military might, not international law, makes the rules, and all the transactions happen far beyond the reach of the West.
And that leaves the entire world with a pretty stark choice. Do we just accept this as the new normal, where any country that borders a choke point can decide to set up a toll? Or does this need to be dismantled, likely by force? The answer to that question is going to define the future of the global economy.